Okay, everyone, welcome back to Ham Radio Takeaways. And we are joined by a very special guest. We're pleased to have Chuck Strower, Whiskey Alpha 7 Echo Bravo Hotel, join us. Chuck, thank you so much. This is really a pleasure.
You're welcome.
Great. And before we jump in, where are you actually?
I currently live in Port Angeles, Washington.
Wow, terrific. All right. It's a beautiful part of the state.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and both Nick and I live in West Seattle, so we're not too far away. But well, great. Well, thank you for joining us. And it's always nice to have folks that come in and tell us about their experiences in amateur radio. And you don't even have to admit your age to do it. But I know that you've got many years under your belt.
Yeah, it's
So
about 60 years, give or take one or two.
wow. Well, that's terrific. So let's jump in. Let me just ask you. So, looking back all those years, uh, what do you make of amateur radio today, and what have you witnessed just, in terms of changes over the years from when you started to where we are today?
Well, I originally got my license when I was in high school. I during the day in high school took a electronics class, and then at night I'd hop on the bus outside the school and ride down to Seattle to the old Seattle radio on Second Avenue. They ran novice classes at night, so I'd take the novice class and then ride home with my dad at that time, who worked in Seattle, and so I got my novice license through Seattle radio back in about 1963, 64, somewhere in there. And my original call sign was WN7EBH. Later on, after the year of novice started to expire, upgraded to technician, and was issued the call sign WA7EBH. From there, went to the general class, advanced class, and then up into the extra class in the 90s. Originally, used to end up building some of my own equipment, modifying some of the commercial equipment that was on the market. The got into AM to start with on the voice side, and of course CW on the code side. And that was about the time the sideband was just starting to catch on and kick off. So progressed up through the sideband deal, got into FM on the 2-meter side back then, and also the 6-meter FM bunch. There was a bunch in Seattle that were on FM, and some of the nets were on VHF AM, and in order to get on the FM side, we had to modify commercial equipment, and we used to have what they called was Motorola twin coffins. They were a big bulky deal that were about 1.5 feet long, stood about 1 foot high and 1 foot wide. One was the transmitter, one was the receiver. Ended up building power supplies for those because they operated on tubes. So of course you had to have the high voltage for the tubes. In the mobile side, they had a dynamo motor that when you push the talk button, it would start up spinning the dynamo motor, which was a 12 volt to about a 300 volt generation system that gave you the high voltage for the tubes. And of course, it would draw about 30, 40 amps, something like that, out of the car battery. Kind of an interesting experience. We were riding with a friend in his Volkswagen Bug at that time that was on 6 volts, and we were going down the old Interstate 405 south of Bellevue. Somebody called him, and this was at night. He picked up the microphone to answer, keyed the microphone to the Volkswagen, come to a screeching halt right in the middle of the freeway. There wasn't enough current to run the Volkswagen Bug and also the radio at the same time. So, kind of exciting being right in the middle of a busy road coming to a screech halt. But,
Absolutely.
From there, advanced up into, that was kind of my love of doing stuff, was building equipment. And I've built several repeaters and was working on the original Mike and Key repeater that we bought from Woody. And I don't remember the exact date, but it was a couple modules that were kludged together, and it was kind of one of these things that about once a month you had to go work on it to keep it going. From there, it progressed up to the commercial stuff that's available today. But that's where I learned my avocation, was through working in ham radio and just enjoying it. Been involved in a lot of public service stuff. That was another one of my pet peeves, was getting involved with public service. We were involved.
Let me, Chuck, let me just jump in and ask a couple of questions. And so first off, I just want to ask, Nick, are you hearing any feedback from me, or is it all good?
There's a little echo right when you break in, but I think it's fine now.
Okay, all right. So Chuck, I just want to go back to your early novice days, and when you went to sit for your license downtown, I presume it was in Seattle as well, that you had to actually sit. There was no, it's a very different licensing experience back in the day than it is today. Is that right?
Yes. The novice license was given by the instructors at Seattle Radio. And of course, you had to wait for a month to find out whether you passed or not. At that point in time, the FCC forbid you from knowing whether you passed or not. But they sent it back to Gettysburg, and you sat there in anticipation for about a month, waiting to find out whether you passed or failed. Then the technician class, general class, and advanced class were all back. You had to go downtown, sit in the FCC office, and listen to the code tape machine that was paper tape. It was not a magnetic recording, but a paper tape with holes punched in it. The little stylus wrote on the tape, and as it went by the holes, it would produce a sound that they would sit there and adjust with a rheostat on the machine. So you'd sit there, and it would take them about 5 minutes to get the actual speed to where it was supposed to be, and it would be running up and down. And all the time you were given a chance to practice the code, but with the different speeds, sometimes a little hard to do it. But the field engineer, Dick Deach, he would come out there and adjust everything, and then he'd say, "Okay, guys, time to take the test." And you punch the go button on it. Sometimes it would work just fine. Other times the tape would break about halfway through your code test, so you have to stop it, put a piece of Scotch tape over the tear in the tape, and either cut out or notch the character out. Then they'd start over again. So sometimes it took about 2 or 3 times to practice the actual code reception. And then they had a hand key that was screwed to the top of the desk, and you had to sit there with the hand key and punch out the code, and with him listening on the side. When make it a little more nervous as you were taking the code test, he'd be walking around with his hands behind his back, kind of just strolling around the table and going, okay, a few little side comments would increase the nervousness of the candidates.
Oh, no.
When everybody got done, he'd say, "Okay, you all passed." So, he didn't even bother reading the paperwork, because he knew as he walked around the room, whether you're actually able to copy the code or not.
Right.
When you went to send, he gave you a piece of paper with the statement on it that had all the characters in the alphabet, and if you went through the characters and he could actually make out what you were sending, you say you passed. So, but it was kind of a very interesting way to take a test compared to the way things are done today.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does strike me that, you're already nervous and, scared by the whole ordeal. And then for these other things to happen, especially the tape breaking. So I have another question. Nick, want me to continue, or did you want to jump in and ask anything?
No, not at all. This is
Okay. All right. Yeah. So thinking about when you mentioned when the sideband started to come in and that technological change. And I was thinking, I have, as part of my collection, I have an old Harvey Wells TBS 50, which has, is all AM, and it's 2-meter AM, which is kind of neat. But the reason why I'm mentioning this is because technologies evolve quickly, obviously, and in, let's just say, in more contemporary times, the dawn of FT8 has brought its own degree of controversy, let's say, where you see fewer CW action on 6 meters these days. Everybody's gone to FT8 on 6 meters, when there's an opening, among other things.
Right.
So my question for you is, what was if you think back, what was your experience when that transition from AM to sideband was beginning? Were people embracing it, or was there like, that's the end of radio as we know it, or what did you make of that?
No, I think most of the hams kind of accepted the transition going up that way because the sideband gives you increased power over the AM signal going out. So the DXers and that kind of caught on to it pretty quick. It was less to catch on in the VHF side of things. Most of the stuff back then was either AM or FM. So the 2-meter sideband and 6-meter sideband stuff took a little bit longer to get accepted by the hams back then. But the FT8 stuff now, it's just computer talking to a computer. There's no skill levels involved and that sort of thing. So, back, I'll call it in the olden days, you develop some skills on being able to operate, make your calls, and work other stations. It was quite a fun deal versus just walking in and seeing what your computer has logged for you.
Right. So this is a sort of a different technological transition now into this digital to digital kind of communication. Yeah.
I still enjoy rag chewing and talking with people and finding out different things, especially on some of the foreign operators. You get one that's not interested in seeing how many people he can work in a minute, but one that will actually sit there and tell you about his life and his area that he lives in. So, you gain some knowledge of the world.
Exactly. So I gather from your Port Angeles QTH, you've got a pretty good takeoff. And so describe that. I mean, what's your typical, DX experience from your station?
Well, I worked a whole lot of Europe, Africa, the Soviet Union, all the Southern Pacific, some of the Asian countries. So it's a pretty good location. Although to the south, I have the Olympic Mountains that have somewhat blocked, but in some ways it's kind of an asset that numbs out the Californian stations overriding the European stations. So it acts kind of as a little bit of a filter for you.
Nice.
That's really interesting. So you were talking to radio operators in the Soviet Union while it was still the Soviet Union.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you feel like that was, I don't know, was that like a political outlet for those people at all, or was it just radio? It's just radio.
It's just a regular person type thing. I was involved in the 1990 World Radio Sport contest. I hosted people from Yugoslavia, a couple of the operators. One of them now, last I heard, he was in the political side of one of the breakaway states of Yugoslavia there. But one interesting thing, there was like 30 stations with operators. We used to have parties almost every night. And the conclusion was that they were like us. There was no political stuff in these things. Everybody's attitude was just let us alone, let us enjoy life. And one of the Russian guys says, you know, we should just lock up all the world leaders in a room, and whoever wins walks out and he's the leader. You know, that type of a thing. It was a very interesting deal that we all came together as hams. We all operated the contest and enjoyed each other's company. So, you know, hams are hams all over the world. They're essentially out of the political side of things.
So, Chuck, just to build on that, Danny K7SS is a good friend of ours, and for the 1990 WRTC, the first of the series, I know that that sort of aligned with the Goodwill Games.
Yes.
Yeah. So that really was an history-making event. So fast forward to the more recent WRTCs. What do you make of the competition that you helped to create?
Well, I think it you know, has increased, and the quality of the equipment is increased tremendously. So they have a little bit of an advantage over what we had when we originally started. I know my station had a what was it, a Kenwood radio in a TH7 7-element beam at 100 feet on our tower, and this station, the operators were able to really work things, but they had an issue. They were disqualified because they were not doing their identification correctly. So, you know, a little technical aspect of it, but the guys today do have an advantage over all the newer equipment that are hotter, and how can I say, the bandwidths are narrower, so they can actually, you know, wipe out the sidebands of other stations and that. So,
Well, and also the stations, the competitors are situated in such a way where they're all in it with relatively similar conditions, operating conditions.
right.
Yeah, so I suppose that has improved, for lack of a better word, it's improved this sort of manner of competition because everybody's using the same antenna or they have the same sort of context that they have to deal with.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, great. So let's chat a minute about some of your other experiences. You mentioned, for example, and I suppose I'll just lead with this, that you're a co-founder of the Mike and Key Amateur Radio Club. And I'm curious of all the things you could say, what are some of the highlights or the thoughts that come to mind with what it took to create the Mike and Key Club, and where did that come from?
Okay. Back in the 69 70 era, there was a bunch of us that got together at Meeker's Landing in Kent for the VHF Saturday morning talk about radios and that. And out of that, one of the guys at the table, Ken Jackson, K7PZX, mentioned, he says, well, maybe we should start up the Mike and Key Club again. Mike and Key was originally founded in 1962 by Pop Brown, K7LED, and for young boys and girls that got interested in wanting to do their ham license. Well, in about 65, instead of chasing DX and all that sort of thing, the guys' interest turned to chasing skirts, and they kind of dissolved the club. Well, Ken grabbed the paperwork, the corporation paperwork and that sort of thing, and he brought that up at one of the meetings, and there were 7 of us there, and we said, fine, let's do it. So in October 1970, 7 of us got together and reformed the Mike and Key Club. We put in for Pop's call sign, K7LED is the club call sign, and it was granted to us. And our original dues were 25 cents a month. And that was dropped into a coffee can to pay for the coffee and the donuts. Our meetings lasted about 20 minutes, and then the VS sessions lasted another hour. From there, it grew. A couple more people joined us, and a couple more, and it's grown throughout the years. Our original meeting place was in the East King County Sheriff's Precinct on Kent, in the old substation office. Underneath it was a civil defense bomb shelter / communications facility, and we ended up meeting underground in that facility. I think the capacity was like 20 or 25 people, and we quickly outgrew that deal. We moved over to a facility in South Seattle, outgrew that, then moved over to the place in South Renton by the hospital down there. We quickly outgrew that. So we've kind of bounced around for meeting places. Our current membership, I believe, is over 300 members now. And that's more likely, they have at the meetings about 60 or 70 active folks there. Some of our other members have moved away to different parts of the country. We have, I'd say, about 40 life members. After 25 years of continuous service for the club, you're granted a life membership. So it's, kind of grown. It's been involved in a lot of activities. They were in the World Goodwill radio games, and also the competition, providing communications for the transport buses, some of the officiating stuff and that sort of thing. They've been involved all over the place in different events, and they've become a kind of a pool of operators for doing all the different public service events. There's quite a number of the members actually get involved with stuff.
Yeah. Well, so before we go to some other questions, I just want to ask though about your experience in sort of getting the organization organized, and if you were to fast forward to today, let's say, any points of advice or any insights, if you look back on what you did to create it, and then you look now for those that either are interested in creating a radio club, or they may be in a radio club and they're looking to sort of up their game a bit, any thoughts or ideas or advice that you might give, looking back?
Yeah, basically have fun, make it interesting and enjoyable. Have some presentations, not necessarily always technical about radio, but about stuff that's going on in the community. We used to have speakers come in from, like the FAA, the Coast Guard, that sort of thing to, talk about how their organizations work. The Mike and Key Club has a field day, and it's a fun event held up on Marrowstone Island. Our original field days were held up on Cougar Mountain, and we went down to the civil defense office and got these big old military tents, and they were about like 20 feet, 30 feet in diameter, and set up stations in there. We had a lot of fun. One of the things that happened was kind of funny. We used to have outhouses, and after one of our events, the guys finished off the keg of beer that we had, and we had a saying: "Where Bambi goes, nothing grows, except for if you had to do the number 2, you went to the outhouse, and the outhouse got to be shaken back and forth if the guy was in it. Well, one time it got away and it went down the hillside, top over bottom, and that sort of thing, and ended up down at the bottom of the hill. Everybody is wondering if the guy that was inside had been killed or not. But after a minute or two, the door flops open and he stands up and is literally covered in all sorts of stuff. And just kind of like the race car drivers, he stands up and he waves his arms and he says, "I'm okay, guys. I'm okay." His wife made him ride home in the back of a pickup truck.
And that, my friends, is a ham radio takeaway.
So have fun doing stuff. That's the biggest thing. Don't get it too political, and go out and enjoy the deal of ham radio. Mike and Key has people in all aspects of the hobby, from CW voice up to slow scan TV, fast scan TV, building electronics, all that sort of thing, and be diverse. That's one of the things that keeps the club going.
Great. Well, so thank you for that. So just to sort of move towards a wrap up here, I know this weekend coming up is a pretty big event that Mike and Key's been sponsoring for many, many years. That's the Puyallup Ham Fest. And I'm wondering if you can not only speak to the history of that, but if those were, if anybody out there is thinking about attending, I will be there. I think Nick is contemplating. I think I'm going to try to talk you into going. Yeah. And, but for those that are thinking about it, what can they expect?
Okay. Well, the Mike and Key flea market actually had its start when we were up on the East Hill precinct in Kent. One of the guys from Ray Telco that worked for Ray Telco brought up a whole bunch of Motorola equipment that Ray Telco wanted to get rid of, some of the stuff that they'd had sitting on the shelves since the 40s, and spread it out in the grass, and everybody went around and picked up what they want and kind of haggled the price a little bit. And then that grew from there to the Mike and Key had an auction set up in McMicken Heights Community Center, where the hams would come in and bring their wares, and we'd auction them off. The club would take 10% of the selling price, and that kind of grew out of McMicken Heights. Then we decided to, after the suggestion from somebody from Anchorage Radio Club, to hold a flea market. Our first flea market was held at the old Long Acres Racetrack in Renton. First year we went down there and we took up the first floor. Next year it grew up to where we were taking up the 2 floors, and we used to run a 2-day event, but the attendance on Sunday was very minimal, and we weren't recouping our cost of the price of the rental. So we outgrew long acres, and the only other very viable alternative was Puyallup Fairgrounds. Our first fairgrounds deal was held in the expo hall, and we rented about half of that. The next year, we outgrew the expo hall from the amount of people wanting to participate, so we went over to the pavilion, and that's a 2-floor facility, and we can get about 300 plus tables in the facility itself, cellar tables, and we have not only people bringing in their used equipment, but also commercial sellers that have brand new equipment that are there to sell some of their stuff and also exhibit and explain the different radios. So the flea market runs from 9 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. People load in their used equipment in that on Friday evening. I think it's from about 2:30 or 3 to about 7:30 at night. And the next Saturday morning, we still got folks loading stuff in at 5 o'clock in the morning to about 8:30. The doors open at 9 and close at 3. And then the fun begins as everybody starts going to get in their cars and want to get the heck out of there. So
Yeah.
they're all vying for position. One year, one of our vendors left a whole big box of stuff. And of course, the fairgrounds charges us for dumpster weight for all the stuff that gets thrown into the dumpster. But he left this big box and he started driving out of the fairgrounds. So we were running behind him and threw this big box of stuff up on the back of his trailer as he drove out the gate. So lo and behold, when he gets home, all that stuff he thought he left there is right in his trailer.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
the flea market's a lot of fun. You meet a lot of interesting people, and you can talk with people about their equipment. A lot of them are very willing to share their experiences and how to modify stuff and build stuff and that sort of thing. So there's a whole lot of knowledge in the fairgrounds itself.
Absolutely. You know, I was going to just touch on that. I've been many times, and I have to say that in addition, what you're saying, meeting up and seeing, folks that that you might not see much, if at all, in between, because they just live far away or whatever, because it attracts folks from long distances. And a lot of people show up for this.
Yeah, we have
And
people coming from Montana and California, all over the Northwest.
yeah, it's a big draw. And to your point, I have to say that when I walk around and notice something at a table that somebody's offering up for sale, and I may not be the person that's interested in buying it, but just being curious, you can learn so much by talking. Usually is the case that the person that has that on their table, they know what it is and they can speak to it. It's not always the case, but usually is the case. And if they can, you can learn a lot about just a whole gamut of technologies that you might not see ordinarily. I mean, it's really it's almost like a museum in some ways.
Yes. And a person just starting off into ham radio can pick up a lot of good deals.
So let's just chat a bit about etiquette. So if somebody were new to this and they were looking to go in and buy an HF rig, let's say, what should they keep in mind in terms of how they would approach someone about that?
Basically, most of the hams are very honest type people, although you do have some scrupulous folks there. But one of the things, if you're going to buy a radio, pick it up and smell it, because anything that's been burned inside will give a very pungent odor. Look it over. Stuff that's burned usually leaves black marks. if the guy is very hesitant about you taking a look inside or something like that, that might be kind of a red, yellow flag. But I believe, most of them, well, all our tables have access to electricity, so you can have them plug it in and turn it on and listen for noise and see what happens. Handhelds the same way. The biggest thing with handheld radios is batteries. After several years of use, the batteries have a tendency to start losing their ability to, hold a charge in that. Although there's a lot of manufacturers that have batteries for sale for the radios. So if the thing turns on and makes noise and the battery might be questionable, replacement battery, I'll say, is usually around $30.
Mm-hmm.
Some are higher, some are lower, but look at the radio, see if it's been dropped, if it's got broken displays, broken antenna, that sort of thing. But most of the hams say are honest, and they'll say, hey, this is for parts. So, but look them in the eye. If they keep looking away from you when they're talking to you, that's kind of a questionable nature of things.
Yeah, Chuck, I was going to say that one of the benefits of a ham fest, and in particular this one, is that it does give you the opportunity to interact with folks that are likely known by others there. They've been around a lot. They're not one-time wildcats that you don't quite know what they're selling. And, I usually is the case. And I either know a lot of them already, or I can sense that they are known by others, and therefore they can be trusted because, their reputation in some ways is right out on the table.
That's correct. And if you go there with an experienced buddy, listen to what they have to say. Or if you go there with a group, somebody in the group may have a feeling on, yeah, that's a good radio. No, that was a boondoggle from the beginning type thing. So,
right.
And most of the stuff today is solid state, but don't be afraid of picking up an old tube model, because there's lots of guys that have tubes available. I have boxes of old tubes, although I don't have any tube radios now, but I do hold on to the tubes for the friends that need a replacement tube.
Fantastic. Yeah. And that's a great place to get tubes. And that's great information. Chuck, I want to say, just as we wrap up here, first off, thank you so much for your time. And, your perspective on this and the history that you bring is really, I think, really valuable. And it's important for people to hear. So I guess let me just pause here. Nick, any questions before I?
Well, I don't know that I have any questions, but I really appreciate the points that you made about talking to other people, meeting a lot of interesting people there, just learning a lot just by going, right? Like, I'm actually a fairly new ham. I got my license last year. And so, I don't know, Jonathan was saying, Nick, you should really come. I got a spot for you in my car. And like, just hearing you talk about how, like, go with someone else and ask them their opinions and try and like learn from the process.
Yeah, if it sounds too good to be true, the old saying, it might be. But, and don't be afraid to walk around, because there's a lot of similar items. And, take a look. Yeah, there's 3 items. Talk to the actual sellers of those 3 different items and see what they have to say and compare. 2 of them sound pretty good. The third one's out in left field. Well, be aware.
Yeah.
Well,
I know that our club, we have a bunch of equipment that was just donated recently by the family of a Silent Key, and so we're going to have a bunch of equipment, solid, great equipment. We just, we want to raise some money for the club, and so I'm sure that kind of thing happens a lot, right? There's got to be a lot of that kind of thing. So
And there's a lot of repricing going on after the first hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just going to mention, Chuck, that, you know, I not to sort of give away a little tactical secret here, but it is usually the case that guys that come in, guys or gals, but let's just say guys that come in with heavy boat anchors that they're looking to sell, and long about 2:00, they're not really interested in lugging that big old boat anchor back to their car, especially in the rain. So you might get some good deals right around right around close. Has that been your experience?
Yes.
So keep your eyes open, and
Yeah, we have a saying amongst the organizer of the thing. Usually it goes from table to table to table to dumpster.
all right. Well, Chuck, thank you. Any closing thoughts? Anything that you haven't said so far that you would want either a new ham or a seasoned ham to know after some 60 odd years of being a radio amateur? Any words of wisdom?
Just go out and have fun in the hobby, and you know, don't make it your primary deal in life, but make it, about middle of the road. I know there's been a lot of hams that go overboard, and the consequences are not nice on the other end, type of thing with the wife. So find an understanding companion.
Well put. Well, thank you, Chuck. Really been a pleasure. And if I can succeed in talking Nick into coming along,
You may have done it.
we will both see you at the Puyallup Ham Fest this Saturday.
Okay, I'll be down there.
All right.
Great.
Thanks so
All
much,
right,
Chuck.
7-3.